Okay, so last week I uploaded some photos of some profiles, the way that we attacked our single origins for the week in the roaster. And I got some really good feedback from you guys, a whole stack of questions. So I figured I would do this very, very quick video and give you an opportunity to see my first attempt at a new coffee for common folk. So we've just received the coffee from Selva Negra, which is a coffee from Nicaragua. Sam bought it whilst he was over there recently, and this is my first two roasts. And so what you're going to see is you're going to see two very different profiles. I'm going to discuss how they tasted, and we're going to go from there. So we'll jump in and we'll have a look at these two profiles. So we have, if we look up here, we've got two batches. Batch number 8357 and 8358. The blue being 8357, if we look down here. So this blue roast, if we go along, we have a look. We dropped in, which means the temperature of the drum, we dropped in at 180 degrees. If we look up here, we'll be able to see the exact temperatures as I scrub through the profile. So as I've dropped in, I've added heat, and that's what this temperature is, this blue wiggly line. This is the temperature of the air entering the roast, entering the roaster. So this is the temperature of the beans, this line at the bottom, and this squiggly line at the top is the environment temperature, and this line that kind of accelerates up and then degrades back down, that is our rate of rise. That's the acceleration, the speed, or the velocity that the coffee is sort of moving, the speed in which it's taking on heat. So we have these two lines. So the first profile, turning point down here, which is the point in which the beans and the coffee roaster reach equilibrium. Turning point of 106 degrees at a minute 35, that's good. That means the roast had enough, quite a bit of energy behind it. The roaster had at least 30 minutes to charge before I dropped in the first batch. So I let the coffee roaster sit at 200 degrees for a good half an hour before I started roasting. So the roaster's progressed, and we can see that I am decreasing the amount of heat that I add to the coffee. One thing that I'm worried about with this coffee, being the first time I've roasted it, is over roasting it, scorching it, really destroying it. I don't know how much heat this coffee can take, and so I'm probably a bit cautious here. And you can see that my rate of acceleration really starts to dip. That's what this is here. My rate of acceleration dips, and the whole roast kind of starts to lag a little bit. Remember, this is my first roast, it's my first tackle, and my first approach. And the whole roast kind of lags a little bit, and then we get to 12 minutes, and that's when we hit first crack. Now, this is probably, in hindsight, a little bit slow. And then we reach the finishing of the roast at 204 degrees at 15 minutes. And that was, if we look up here, that is total development of 20%. So that's good. So after roasting, I then head over to our EK roast grinder, grind some coffee, measure its colour. The colour came out at 127 on our colour meter, which is quite light. I would probably be aiming for at least 120. But light is okay if it tastes good. You know, all of these numbers don't mean anything unless the coffee tastes good. So, ground the coffee, measured the colour, brewed some espressos on our Senesso in the roastery. Brewed some espressos and had a taste of the coffee. And it was good. It had a really zippy acidity. It was really, zippy and lively, but it was a little bit sour and a little bit flat too, which was kind of weird. It didn't seem to have a lot of weight, didn't have a lot of body, it didn't have a lot of presence. It kind of tasted a bit flat, a bit thin. It was alright, but just a little bit boring. I'm being pretty harsh in my assessment of this coffee, but that's what my job is. So, a little bit thin. I want to preserve that body, but I also really liked that sort of green apple acidity that we were tasting. So, when it comes to roasting again, I have condensed the whole profile, and I've hit the coffee with way more heat. So if we now look at the red line, paying attention to the red line, you can see that the temperature that I let the roaster get up to, the air entering the roaster, is it's quite a bit higher. What are we talking? Nearly 40 degrees hotter, which is quite a bit. And what effect that had on the coffee is that the beans heated up a lot faster and got hotter faster, got to a hotter temperature a lot faster. We got to first crack nearly 2.5 minutes before that previous roast. So there's quite a bit more energy going into this coffee now. The coffee has reached critical temperature a lot faster, which is cool. So we allow the coffee to stay in the roaster for 2 minutes and 10 seconds, and that's a total development percentage of 18.3%. So all of this means nothing until we taste. That's at the end of the day. Doesn't matter what your profiles look like. It doesn't matter what the numbers say. If it tastes like crap, what are you doing? So my thoughts were, this first profile went for 15 minutes. So what happens if we roast, which is quite long, what happens if we roast a bit faster and condense that profile down, get to critical temperature faster? That's what I tried to do by adding quite a bit more heat to the system early on. And what we get is a faster roast. We brew the espresso, again on the Senesso using our EK. We're using a ratio of 2-to-1, sometimes a little bit more. And the second batch came out quite a bit sweeter. Had a lot more presence. There was kind of like a candied walnut sort of sugariness to it that became more obvious with the second roast, which is pretty exciting, pretty fun. I didn't notice that quite so much in the first batch. And we still have that sort of zippy green apple-like acidity, which is good. The only thing with this batch, so I've only roasted 2 batches of this, and I'm going to tackle it again next week. The only thing was that the finish at the end of the palate, after tasting the coffee on this red profile on the second attempt, it was a little bit powdery, a little bit dry. So maybe the finishing temperature is a touch too high. I'm being super pedantic here. All of the coffees that we roast, collect the data, go back, review the data, taste, make an assumption about how that could taste. If we adjust something, make the adjustment, re-roast it, re-taste it, readjust, re-roast, like proper psychos. And that's what we do for every single coffee all the time. That's what our weeks are about. I hope that is useful to you to look over these profiles and have a go, and I hope you find it interesting. All right, cheers.